I'm building a Tau army, minus the Tau. I'm doing Kroot. And what a collection it is. Nearly 100 miniatures. I've got total board control, move blocking, scout, stealth. I own the secondary mission deck. But it doesn't deal a lot of damage. Now that I've passed the 1,000 point mark, I want to move into some Tau. I need some actual damage pieces. In perusing the Tau range, I particularly like the battle suits, but one did not stand out to me, and that is Shadow Sun. It just didn't really flim my flams, it didn't jingle my bells, it didn't dingle my dangle, it didn't jimmy my jams. It kind of looks like she's T-posing on a pizza slice, so I overlooked her, but then I saw the action figure for Shadow Sun, and just a simple reposing makes her look so much cooler. It looks like she's ready to murder the world. I immediately went out and I bought the model. I don't know what I'm gonna have to do, probably some slicing, grinding, cutting, and sculpting, but I'm gonna make her look like the action figure. Cracking open this box, Shaso Shasara is the current commander of the Tau military now that Commander Farsight is gone. And looking over the instructions, she is a monopose mini. But being basically a robot, I'm hoping I can still be able to slice her apart and reposition her bits for maximum coolness. The kit starts off with her guns, the high energy fusion blasters. These are melta-guns, hopefully for spanking space marines and scratching some tanks. I clipped and cleaned the weapons, but I don't want to glue them together yet. I need to see more how this model works so I can properly modify it. After getting the chest armor done, I got to look at the arms in their spots, and it looks like the arms won't be too bad. I'm still not gluing anything, but now onto the legs. Games Workshop gave Shadow Sun the classic one toe on the tip of a thing, in this case the Aquila from some statue. I clipped this off and then freed her foot, making it look like it was never there. Assembling both legs, one leg is nice and long, but the other one is all bent up. I have some ideas. Right now she's just a pile of parts, but now I know enough to be dangerous. Upper body, all ball joints, super easy, barely an inconvenience. The lower body is where this repose is gonna get a little tricky because the legs are pretty scrunched up in her kind of Superman pose. It's gonna dictate a lot of what I'm able to do, but I think the next step is gonna be building the base. And I wanna build a big old base, maybe even a Korg tower. Also Korg, available at EonsOfBattle.com. I think I've built more 50mm bases this year than I ever have before. I gotta build at least one more. I prepared myself a Cobalt Key 50mm base, checking with a Kroot carnivore so that all my magnets line up across my army. Then I coated the base in ultra-thin superglue and stuck down some thick 1/2 inch cork. She's meant to be flying, so I put down another layer of cork to really beef up this base, and I used a saw to trim it down at an angle so it has a little more irregularity. I double checked where I think she'll go and I added a third tier of cork, like she's peeking over the edge of a cliff. I took a Dremel grinding wheel and dragged this over the surface of the base to make the surface uneven and natural, and I used my fingernails to rip up the edges of the cork so it was evenly jagged all over. Now the base is about half done, I really need to nail down the pose. Starting with the legs. I used my jewelry saw to cut off one leg from the crotch so I can reposition it. Then I carefully cut out the toes using the tip of my hobby knife to score in between the armor and hoof, and then repeating this until I could wiggle and break off the foot. Dry fitting everything, I can get a nice leg up on the biggest tactical rock of my career. This will work, I just have to make it real. I cut off the nubs and the hips and I started drilling 1mm holes through the legs and crotch, and I used some 1mm brass rod to hold everything in this new position. Then I made up some Greenaput. This is Milliput and green stuff mixed 50-50, so I can get the best of both worlds. I used this to rebuild the parts I destroyed, cleaning up the side of the crotch armor and rebuilding the undersuit between the armor pieces. I used my silicone sculpting tools to smooth and shape everything, and the point of my hobby knife to add in some rib texture to the undersuit. I did the right side the same way, using the Greenaput to repose the model, and then for the feet, the hooves are so dainty and delicate, I shoved more goo in the joints and then pressed the feet in. I'll have to attach this in such a way that the weight is on the legs and not the feet. It works! Now this is pod racing. If I could have any superpower, it would be the ability to make green stuff cure instantly. I've got the legs looking good and I want to keep going, but it's so fragile right now and it's going to be that way for like 2 or 3 hours while the putty starts to harden. If there was a product, if somebody out there made UV cure green stuff, that would be a game changer. I would sculpt on everything. But as it is, I'm gonna keep going, but I'm just gonna have to be careful and I'm probably gonna break it a couple of times. Now that I have the leg standing, I can put together her upper body. She's pretty top heavy, so I wanna make sure that she's nice and centered over the base. I wanna bring these arms down to her side, so I clipped off the pegs and sanded them smooth, so I have a nice clean ball joint. And I shoved in some more Greenaput into the holes, carving it up so I can extend the arms and let me get the angle I want. I got the front arm done and did the same thing in the back. I can be a little messy with this because eventually the shoulder pads will go over the green stuff, hiding the crime. The shoulder pads also needed to get repositioned a little since the kit's shoulders are now so far down. I used some balls of green stuff to get these shoulders right where I wanted them. I was fighting gravity getting these arms positioned. I would wiggle them into place and then they would settle a little, so I had to keep fussing with them to get the pose right. But you know what never needs any fussing? That's right, EonsOfBattle.com. Over there we have all kinds of hobby goodies, army painter paints, brushes, wet palettes, basing cork, ultra thick and ultra thin super glue, and we have terrain. It's the best way to support us doing what we do by getting a membership. Each month members get a credit good for any one terrain pack we have ever made or the brand new one. Our new terrain for December, the Bubble City. Embrace your inner amphibian with this alien encampment, a truly unique series of aquatic structures like the Bubble House, Bubble Command Center, and Bubble Fortress. And it's not just buildings, it also has some powerful defenses in the turret and shield walls. Get ready to get immersed in some underwater goodness perfect for all the popular wargames. The next problem to overcome is connecting the upper and lower body. Because of the conversion, I can't just clip them together anymore, so I carved away her tummy and inserted some more brass rod to connect her torso to the legs. Then I shoved in some more greenaput and sculpted a new tummy, making it a little taller and wider than the original. I used my knife to sculpt in some more ribbing. I shoved the two halves together and it all squished into place. Now she's actually together. Right now very precariously, but once it's dry it should be pretty sturdy. I can finish her off attaching the bare head, and this will actually require some conversion too. According to the instruction, her ponytail hangs off the left side. I need to flip it so it's on the right. This was some extremely precise surgery, drilling a little hole just big enough to fit a sewing pin so that the hair is pinned in place. Now I can have her looking over her right shoulder, and with a little more greenaput, I can have her ominously looking for her next target. I've got her standing, and I think she's looking pretty darn good. It was not easy. Most of the tricky part was just fighting gravity with that green stuff. I kept fixing those arms and they kept wandering their way back, but right now, I think I've got it good. So I need to put her aside, and luckily there's still more to work on. She comes with two drones. The Guardian Defense drone, which is really nice. It makes her -1 to be wounded at range, which stacks really nicely with her stealth, -1 to be hit, and Lone Operative, not allowed to be shot at outside of 12-inch range. All of those don't shoot me buffs hopefully will stack really nicely to make her a little bit more survivable on the tabletop because she's kind of shrimpy. She's a Space Marine with 2 extra wounds. The other drone, the Command Link drone, is also kind of fun. If any stratagems are spent near her, on a 5-up, I get that command point back. Not likely, but it's a little something. Now, those two drones are supposed to be other models that kind of hover nearby, but they're war gear. They're not actual miniatures according to the rules, so I kind of want to put them on the model itself. I did that with my Ethereal, and I feel like it looks pretty snazzy. And although it makes the whole model a little bit more tippy, I feel like it's still a little nicer than just having two really tippy guys that just kind of puppy guard her at all times. The Tau drones are probably the most recognizable thing in a Tau army. These cute little AI pets, once I had them assembled, it's time to see how I can sneakily attach these somewhere on the model. On the right side, I can easily attach the drone to the base. I drilled some more holes, carefully inserting some sewing pins. I did 2 to make the connection a little more sturdy, and I can stab these right into the cork. The other drone will be a little more difficult. I want to have the tip of the fin touching the edge of Shadow Sun's wing. I drilled up into the drone on an angle and shoved in a sewing pin. This is super sketchy. If anything goes wrong, it'll be almost impossible to fix, but going slow, I managed to pull it off, and I drilled a hole down into her wing to accept the drone's pin. It does work, and I think it'll look pretty impressive all painted up. Before paint though, I need to attach her to the base for real. I drilled up into her legs, avoiding the hooves. Those hooves are just decorations the way I've built her. I drilled some 1mm holes up into her legs and shoved in some brass rod. I held her over the base to show me where to drill, and I made some holes into the cork to accept my pins. Now I can go ahead and finish off the base, cleaning up the cork with my fingers and then removing everything for the finishing touches. I dremeled the surface a little more and then broke out the wood putty. I smeared this all over the base, wiping it away with my fingers and a paper towel to leave it behind in the recesses so my cork looks like a nice windswept desert cliff. And speaking of desert, I glued down some desert cactuses from Epic Basing to spice up the base with a little greenery. And I spread sand texture paste down on all the flat sections of the model. I have changed almost everything about the Mini, and I think it's looking pretty wizard. I am very satisfied with this. This feels like a sneaky lone operative Shadow Sun. This Shadow Sun could hide behind a rock. This Shadow Sun could not. Now it is time to paint Shadow Sun, and I think I'm actually gonna be deviating a little bit more from the box art. She's mostly white with a little bit of orange. I think I'm gonna do classic Vior La white with quite a bit of red. I started off giving her exactly the same base coats as the rest of my Kroot army. I sprayed them all with a black prime, then a base coat of fur brown, and then a zenithal from above with some space dust, a light yellow color. This makes my natural Kroot minis have a nice warm complexion, and I think it'll still help me out for this ultra high-tech mech. I used white ink sprayed from above to brighten up her armor, leaving that primer and fur brown shown in the deepest recesses in the underside of her suit. Then I broke out a black wash and my long bristle paintbrush and started laying this on. I tried my best to get the paint to flow into the ditches between our armor panels. In a few spots I spilled, but that's okay. I just kept on working and eventually I'll get to a cleanup step. Now onto the guns and dark parts. I took some Grim Black speed paint and I put this onto our melted guns and all the not white armor parts. This speed paint gives me some decent contrast, and in most spots one coat was all I needed. Now the armor is looking pretty good, just a little bit more fine tuning. I used some white paint to clean up my mistakes I made with the black wash, doing more layers to cover up any spillage and feathering it out to match the airbrush layers. She's really coming together. The white armor really wasn't bad at all, and I feel like the little bit of brown and yellow showing through in the recesses does a lot to help set her in the dark desert environment that I got my Krootsies. It did not take long to get the model here, and that's got me really excited for the rest of my Tau because I got Crisis Suit teams, I got Broadside Battle suits, I got Cold Star Commander, I got some Tau Stealth suits. I feel like it's gonna come together pretty quick. It did not take long to get the model here, but now she's a named character, and I spent a little extra time on her. The guns are looking a little bland. I sprayed them with some more whiting from above so that the contrast and lighting is more dramatic. And after a varnish, I dry brushed the guns with some white paint so that the edges are more extreme. Then I gave them another coat of black speed paint, this time Occultist Cloak, a slightly cold black. This cold next to the slightly warm tones in the rest of the model will help these guns shine. And speaking of shine, I sprayed some bright blue over the exhaust ports on the guns and then dripped pure blue into these holes. I held the model upside down and then dripped white paint right into the inside parts of these vents, like there's a brighter glow coming from just inside the gun barrels. I feel like this gives a really fun, powerful look that I'll have to carry through on the other 11 melt guns in my Tau list. Now onto the gold, and gold's the color I struggle with. Gold can be yellow, green, or red. For my Tau, I'm thinking green. I started with a really dark brassy color, painting this onto all her round spots, and I came in with some bright greenish gold for the highlights, then some silver spots for the brightest spots. I dripped some white paint onto the Tau symbol on her chest, and then cleaned up the two symbols on her shoulders with some more white paint. Now the armor is done, it's time for one of my all-time favorite things, decals. I have this sheet of Greater Good alien decals available from EonsOfBattle.com. I picked out some alien text and I carefully applied this to her thighs. They just barely fit. Then I put some of these little squares onto her robo arm shoulder pads, and on her ankles, some alien racing stripes. These were a little tricky to get into place, but they really make her look fancy. Now to add some more red. I took a dark red paint and started base coating the chunks of her armor that I want red, painting this over the low spots and leaving the up spots white in preparation for some pure bright red. I put on the pure red, then glazed back and forth between the bright and the dark to make a gradient. This high contrast will make the red really sparkle. And speaking of sparkle, I edge highlighted the armor and did one final pass with some orange paint to really push the contrast. Now for the secret weapon of my Tau army, battle damage, but kinda subtle damage. I sponged some white paint over the red and I let this land in the white armor as well. This helps sell the painted on red accents and gives a little more texture and realism all over. And speaking of all over, I gave the model a once over and those white shoulder symbols just aren't doing it for me. I decided to go with gold. After a base coat, highlight, and some silver specular highlights, I feel like these are looking much more impressive. Now the armor is done, time to paint Shadow Sun herself. I accidentally broke her head off an hour ago, but this is handy now for painting. I painted her hair using all the same highlight layers I mixed up for the armor. I edge highlighted the strands of her hair, leaving the dark colors on the bottom and underside. I painted her metal bands with some gray paint, doing a few quick highlights of gray. Then it was time for her face. I took some Raging Sea contrast paint and put this over her skin. I used the same color on my blue Kroot, so she'll match, or rather some Kroot have eaten Tau and now match her. I put some more layers of Raging Sea on her cheeks and skull to darken them a little, and then I did some highlights of teal on her face, mixing some space dust into the paint to brighten it. I highlighted her brow, cheekbones, and chin, bringing these up to a bright saturated color, but nothing too far. Her armor is already white, so I can't go too light. I dotted her eyes with some white paint, and I can glue her head back down, hopefully permanently this time. Ooh, that's a mini right there. I think previously my model of the year was this Tau Ethereal that I painted in like April, but it might be Shadow Sun now. She is going to be an incredibly fun model to play with on the tabletop, or at least a very stressful one. Those two Tau Meltaguns that she's got, hitting on 2s, rerolling 1, so basically a sure thing, but then you get to the wound roll, strength 10. It's gonna be wounding the kind of things that she wants to shoot at on 4s and 5s. Oh, 4s and 5s can so easily turn into nothing. And I'm not gonna spend a CP to reroll it, although, because of Shadow Sun, I would get that CP back on a 5-up. Oh, is that dumb enough to do? Does that increase my odds? It sorta does, although the risk of a CP, my army really wants CP, so I don't know if I wanna risk it on just trying to make those Meltas connect. Maybe early game I'll just have her sniping Marines, and then late game, if there's a tank that I have not managed to destroy, just send her in and see what happens. But before I can do that, I gotta get her drones done. On the drones, I base coated them alongside her with the airbrush so I can jump to hitting the black parts with some grim black speed paint, and I drip some black wash into the panels. Then, because these are advanced drones, I decided to pick out their decorations with some gold, the same gold I used on her armor. Now for red. Painting drones is where I figured out to really push the contrast with red. I painted some stripes of pure red and some stripes of very dark red all along the trim and accents on these drones. Then I glazed intermediate tones in the gaps between the two reds until I had a nice gradient. Once the red was looking good, I edge highlighted all these spots with some red and then orange paint for the brightest highlights. Now my drones are factory fresh. It's time for some more decals. I put a big alien glyph right on their foreheads. Leave a comment of what you think these symbols mean. Then I gave them both the same white sponging I did on the armor. The drones probably take some knocks as they assist and protect Shadow Sun. After that, I picked out the eye lenses of the drone using the blues from the Melt-A-Gun, so I don't have to add another color, and I gave them a coat of satin varnish to protect them. Now to put it all together. On the base, I sprayed the cactuses with some green paint, and then some neon green paint from above. This makes the plants nearly glow with vibrancy. Then I painted all the rocks with a big wet coat of brown with a little bit of fur brown and speed paint mixed in, so that the colors that are on my mini are represented on the base. When that was dry, I dusted the base from below with dark wood speed paint through the airbrush to darken my recesses, and I sprayed some space dust from above onto the peaks to add some more contrast. After a quick dry brushing with space dust and painting the rim of the base brown, I attached all my parts with copious amounts of ultra thick super glue. The Advanced Guardian drone is not going anywhere, and I give myself 2 games before I snap off the Command Link drone. Oh, this thing turned out incredible. And to think, if I had not seen that action figure, I would not have this model. When did the Tau get so cool? Commander Shadow Sun in all her glory. Now I am dying to put together the rest of my Tau battle suits. This army has been super fun to put together because it's kind of 2 different armies. I got to put together a ton of every single Kroot box, and now I get to put together a really cool Tau battlesuit army. I got an awesome 1,000-point Kroot army, and I'm going to have an awesome 1,000-point Tau army. I think the next step for me is gonna be some good anti-tank. I mean, she's anti-tank, but I need something a little bit more reliable. I know Sean is planning at least 1 Mauler Fiend in his army, so I'm gonna need some really big guns. Thanks for watching.